Good morning, everyone, and good evening in India and Europe. Concept of Panchkosha towards self-realization of our souls is a very deep topic that we are going to explore today with Dr. Guru Datta. Dr. Datta is a physician in naturopathy and yogic sciences. Dr. Datta is certified in advanced tongue diagnosis as well as in acupuncture. He has helped a lot of his clients heal over the last 20 years. He's joining us live from Bangalore, India. I am Amita from Nourish Doc, a platform for natural and holistic therapies. I am super excited to introduce all of you to Dr. Guru Datta. Welcome, Guru Datta.
Namaste to everybody. Good morning to everyone in the western part of the globe and good evening in the eastern part of the globe. I'm super excited. This is my third session with Amitaji on Nourish Doc. We had started with diabetes and then we went on to migraine to give a brief about it. Then Amitaji came up with an idea that why don't we talk about only this concept of Panchakoshas, because a lot of people may not really understand this. So we decided and we went ahead to give it a brief touch on this, some insights and highlights. I'll be sharing whatever I know about it in my experience, what I have found, and let us discuss after about 30 minutes of my presentation. Any questions, I'm open to it. Let us understand what is this all about Panchakosha concept. This is from Vedantic philosophy in India, from India. In Vedantic philosophy, human being is not just seen as a physical being. This is one of the concepts from Thaithireya Upanishad. These are the Upanishads are one of the part of the scriptures which explain about in detail about the Eastern philosophy of the world. So Panchakosha concept is one of them and which is applicable to everybody, to all the human beings. Let us understand this in a way, in a manner that we can understand and implement also in our day-to-day living. And we can see those examples in our day-to-day living very obviously when we understand these concepts. Let me start by telling that health and well-being is not a destination. It's not just a goal. It's a continuum. I would rather compare or correlate this Panchakosha concept with quantum physics of today's science. Because different layers, what I'm going to speak about Panchakosha concept has different kinds of vibrations. That's what quantum physics is all about. We need to, even though we have to unravel about quantum physics much more than what our Vedantic philosophy and understandings were done by seers and rishis in the ancient times. Let me jump on to the aspect that, as the name itself indicates, Panchakosha means Pancha means five, Kosha means layers. Human being is not just a physical being. We understand that, isn't it? We are much more than that. That's what the Vedantic philosophy spoke about and understood about through meditation itself without any formal scientific exploration of that kind as we do today, not in those ancient times. Just through meditation, this was understood. Those five koshas are nothing but, as the picture itself indicates, Annamaya Kosha, that's the physical body. Pranamaya Kosha, Pranamaya, the name itself goes what it is. Energy, ethereal, that's what we mean by Pranamaya Kosha, or breath, that's what exactly we mean. The third layer is Manomaya Kosha, the emotions and the mind. I'll come to those details little bit later. And the fourth layer, fourth subtler layer is Vijnanamaya Kosha. That is our intellect and the wisdom. And the ultimate, actually the goal of every human being should be, and in reality, that is the one based on the ancient scriptures of Eastern philosophies of the world, that you're always seeking a state of blissfulness. Knowingly or unknowingly, we are always looking forward for it, whether through means of material aspects or non-material aspects as well, we are always looking for contentment and happiness. That is what Anandamaya Kosha is. Uh, Coincidentally, my center's name is also Anandamaya Wellness Center. That was the concept which I based my center's name as well. Let's go to the next slide, Amitaji. Annamaya Kosha, let me explain that in little more detail. As the picture on the right side, where you see, I have drawn 5 different layers, and the innermost is the Annamaya Kosha, as you see. Annamaya Kosha. Kosha, as I explained, it's a layer. Anna is food. This body was a single celled organism in my mother's womb, from the conception of my mother's ovum and the sperm of my dad. So that grew up to this trillions of cells as a big human being. How was it possible? Unless my mother fed me in a room and later as well. So the physical body, the anatomy and the blood, the muscles, all those things is also because of the food which is giving nourishment to us to help us to grow this level. The most important aspect of Annamaya Kosha is it is quite gross and it is visible to our naked eyes. We can touch, feel, and understand to our naked eyes. So that is what makes it very physical aspect of Annamaya Kosha, what it is all about. Let us make a point here that Annamaya Kosha is not just nourished by food, it's also nourished by our environment through air, water, indirectly from our soil as well. Because Mother Earth is the one which gives food. Maybe you're a vegetarian or whatsoever you are, but nourishment comes from the soil for us. So that is very down to earth, grounded, physical body which is visible to our eyes is Annamaya Kosha. All our anatomical things and physiological process are happening in this. And the diseases are also in the Annamaya Kosha, most of it. When we say about infections and non-communicable diseases like diabetes, hypertension, and so many and so forth, which are taking a big storm on the human race, even during this time of pandemic of COVID, which is happening to our physical body. So that is what is Annamaya Kosha and the illnesses about that is. What are all the practices which can keep this healthy? So the most important aspect is, I would say, the food itself. We need to understand what we need to eat, how much we need to eat, when should we eat. All those things forms the basis for our good nourishment. If the body exists, the other layers exist. If body doesn't exist, other layers doesn't exist. It's the bottom of the pyramid, just like that. So we need to understand when we do anything about balancing of Annamaya Kosha, health means balance of all the layers, all the 5 layers. Rather, I would say all three, first 3 layers, and the rest is, I'll come to that later. But food becomes the most important aspect for the Annamaya Kosha to balance. So we need to understand what we need to do in terms of food habits. And there are certain other tools which is also important to keep the Annamaya Kosha in a state of balance and homeostasis, what we call it as in medical terms. That includes exercises. Exercises, it not just means only yogic related. It can be gym, it can be your hiking, it can be your cycling, it can be your any form of exercise, pilates, dance. All those things are very important to keep our physical body active and homeostatic. And at the same time, we have found these days through scientific experiments and science as well, human being by physical body is designed for activity, not for sedentary life. Sedentary life has become one of the most important causative factors for many chronic, incurable, or whatever you say, the word, diseases in the world today, including heart disease, cancer, and the list goes on. So exercise is one of the most important aspect. And in those terms, in terms of yoga, if I have to speak, physical asanas is the one which helps us to balance. our physical body. Along with that, we have several other aspects also which can help us on those aspects. We have what is called as Shat Kriyas. Shat Kriyas are cleansing procedures in yogic science, which helps us to keep ourselves clean. We call that as nasal cleaning, called Jalaneti, and then Vamana Dauti, which is called as uh, vomiting in voluntarily by a certain procedure. Then one of them is Shanka Prakshalana Kriya. That is also a detox process wherein we drink saline water and then do specific postures which will help us to eliminate all the toxins and keep ourselves clean. So that's how in the ancient times, yogic life or whatever ancient life was, they used to keep themselves healthy by doing all this. You don't necessarily do this when you get an ailment. You need to do this to keep yourself in a state of wellness, in a state of well being. At the same time, we have some other practices also in those Annamaya Kosha. That includes acupuncture can help you, water therapy can help you, even medication for that matter, whatever medication in terms of homeopathy, supplements, Ayurvedic Panchakarma therapies, Abhyanga, massage therapy, herbal therapies, everything, reflexology, even fasting for that matter, also indicates or helps us to reach a state of balance in Annamaya Kosha. So that is about Annamaya Kosha. Let us move to the next, that is Pranamaya Kosha. Pranamaya Kosha, as we understand, probably in this picture, it has merged a bit, but that's the next layer, little more subtler than the physical body. Can we see air through our naked eyes? We can't, but we can see through microscopic means, probably, right? Oxygen and all the molecules, what is necessary, nitrogen and several gases. Imagine, when are we presumed or declared dead? When we don't breathe, when we stop breathing. So, prana, what we call it as breath, even though prana has a much more vast meaning in Sanskrit, we can translate it to breath in the modern perspective in English. So it is also called the energy layer, energy body of ours. So Pranamaya Kosha is more subtler than the physical body, Annamaya Kosha. This is responsible for all our physiological activities in our body. Energy moves, and the molecules in this layer are much more subtler, and those vibrations are also much more subtler in terms of quantum physics. So, whenever there is an imbalance, you might understand when we are in a state of stress, what exactly happens. If you're very aware of what stress is about, and how what changes happen in our system, first thing which gets affected is our breath. Either you are breathing very shallow, or your breathing rate is high based on your stress and how your system reacts. So you can understand so much of connection is there. Even though the stress is there in your mind, that shows an effect on your physical body. Sorry, on the pranamaya kosha, the breath. So that's how that leads to imbalances when we are repeatedly exposed to several stresses and elicit a stress response, what we call it as fight or fear response, fear or flight response. So that leads to imbalances in pranamaya kosha. I would rather say Pranamaya Kosha is much more important than Annamaya Kosha. And it is much more easier to balance Pranamaya Kosha if we put enough effort and have a consistent practice of healthy practices in terms of breath. How much are we aware of our breath any day? We tend to, even though breath is one function which is both voluntary and involuntary, you can still have a control on your breath, but you can't control your heartbeat, you can't control your digestive movement, you can't control your hormonal variations, but you can control your breath. So how much of effort or how much of awareness have we got to focus on the breath? So if we just do that, there can be a lot of changes. I was recently interacting with one of the scientists in India who happens to be my close friend, and he was working on one project called it's a very I got to know about this and I was so amazed and thrilled about it. He is trying to find, with every breath which goes out of our body, what are the molecules which are there in our breath. So, what does that mean? He found that there are so many toxic molecules which are eliminated from the body when you breathe out. Imagine if you focus and if you do the pranayamas in terms of yoga, you're detoxifying every day. So that's how when we do pranayamas or energy techniques, energy balancing techniques in terms of breathing, which is in part of yogic science and yogic practices, you're already balancing yourself. You're reaching a state of homeostasis. When you reach a state of homeostasis in the Pranamaya Kosha, obviously your anatomical Annamaya Kosha is in a state of balance. That's how we can get Pranamaya Kosha into balance. And it's very, very important for us to understand there are a lot of studies are being done these days with the different techniques of pranayamas, how it is helpful. And it is helpful for many things, including immunity, including our neurological system, our digestive system, hormonal system, that is endocrine. It has effect on all these. Let me say it very clearly to whosoever is hearing that pranayamas or balancing the pranamaya kosha takes you a long way in terms of health and well-being. Let us understand what other things probably, yeah, uh, a few more words on Pranamaya Kosha. There are other tools which can help Pranamaya Kosha as well to bring in a state of balance. One of them is aromatherapy. They are all aromas, natural extracts from leaves, flowers, which can help us to bring in a state of, because aromatherapy happens only through inhalation, through sense of smell. So that is breath through the nostrils. That is the root for our breathing. So aromatherapy is one of them. You might have heard about pranic healing, Reiki. They're all working on these lines. Even acupuncture. Acupuncture is also based on balancing of chi. If you've heard in traditional Chinese medicine, the yin yang concept, which is called a supreme, I'm sorry, I'm not getting that specific terminology, but the yin yang symbol most of us know, that is exactly a state of balance. And when the energies are balanced through acupuncture or acupressure, Pranamaya Kosha is also balanced. So that is a brief about Pranamaya Kosha. Next layer is Manomaya Kosha. I have given the color yellow because Manomaya Kosha is much more subtler. Of all the 5 koshas, I would say, in my perspective, Manomaya Kosha is one of the most important ones. Whenever I have read about philosophy, mind is compared to monkey because it's so difficult to control a monkey. So is our minds. It can jump from one thought to another thought and from one place of living to anywhere in the world in, in probably split seconds. And the most toughest part is to balance or bring in a state of balance in terms of our mind. If we can achieve that, if we can manage that, you have managed everything else. I'm saying this. You can manage everything else. And we are slowly evolving towards a state as a human race that we have to focus more on the mind. And yogic philosophy has understood about this. Ancient philosophies have already understood about that. If you balance your mind, you can balance your breath, you can balance your body, you'll be devoid of many diseases or manage your diseases much better. Rather, you would maintain a state of awesome, very good health and well being. Manomaya Kosha is our seat of emotions and also the seat for several thoughts. It is very powerful in state in our human being. It has such a strong presence in our lives, and that is responsible for so many things. It can be greed, it can be lust, it can be anger, it can be anything, all those emotions. But also, it is also responsible for positivity. You can bring into positiveness as well. That is your choice. So that is the biggest thing what the human race has been given by the creator. That's not there with our other creations. For example, the animals or plants, do they have a mind to decide of what to do? No, we have it, but we are not using it the right purpose. I would rather say the COVID today has to teach us a lesson, has rather taught us a lesson. We were just rushing. What are we up to? Growth, all the time growth. Are we able to spend time with our families? Why is this happening? This is because of my mind. Most of the time, I compare with some my peers, my co-workers, my other family members. I have to make this happen, that happen. I have to grow up. I have to grow in terms of material aspects, so many ways. But have we taught any time I have to manage my mind? Only when there is a problem with my mind, I'm too anxious, I'm depressed. Oh, let me go for counseling. Let me see a therapist. Let me consult a psychiatrist. No, yes, you might require that, but before that, go inwards. See to yourself. Look at the mirror. What are you up to? Do I really need all these things? How much I need? I'm not saying that you should not go behind your livelihood. You need to. You need to live your life. You have to look at positivity. You have to grow. In which direction you have to grow? That's important. So that's where the mind is the root cause for many ailments and illnesses and also loss of health. Simple example, just imagine a diabetic patient is there. He goes to a party and he knows that he's not supposed to eat certain foods which are high in carbs and sugar. But the moment he sees into it through his senses of eyes, the first thing which happens in his mind is a war. One side, it is mentioning that you're not supposed to eat it, it's not good for your health. The other side, oh, what happens if I eat once? It's all right. That's the fight we have. Ultimately, many a times, actually, your Vijnanamaya Kosha, that is next layer, the wisdom will always keep telling you, no, don't eat this. You have already too much on your sugar levels. But mind tells, okay, that's all right. Let me enjoy this. That means mind is always looking at short term happiness, even though it is looking at happiness, it's not on a long term. And let me tell you, happiness we cannot find in our objects. Happiness is there within us. You have to just unravel it. And that's what the ancient seers, rishis did. They just sat in meditation and found happiness within. When you find that happiness, that balance, that state of contentment, you don't need, I'm okay if I'm not eating a sweet one day, that's all right. I've eaten several times in my life all these years. So that's how we can, awareness is very important. The moment you become aware, you know how to manage. So that's what makes us to get the Manomaya Kosha itself can help you in a positive side and also reach to a negative side as well. And this, let me say that when these wars are happening in our mind, that also leads to imbalance in Pranamaya Kosha, Annamaya Kosha, and a low grade inflammation runs in our physical body. That's the Annamaya Kosha, leading to several ailments. And the practices which can help to balance Annamaya Kosha is Yoga Nidra and Yogic practices, the corpse pose, and meditation, and Dharana and Dhyana is in Ashtanga Yoga, what we call it as, and all the therapies, including music, diet, and nutrition, also has a part to play in Manomaya Kosha. Probably I'll take that up in a separate seminar or a webinar, but I cannot go into those details. We can plan one for that in a later stage. So diet and nutrition also plays a role there. Even counseling and Ayurvedic therapies. For example, even if you do massage, you feel so nice mentally, isn't it? Same way, so when you address physical body, it has an effect on Manomaya Kosha. And if you are aware on the Manomaya Kosha, it has an effect on the Annamaya Kosha. They're all working together in an integrated fashion. So it's very important that we need to make sure that all the practices in the traditional system of medicines and living, they address all these layers. That's how we can get Manomaya Kosha into a state of balance as well. So the next layer is Vijnanamaya Kosha. Amitaji, I think I have another 4 or 5 minutes,
Sure.
probably.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's fine. That's fine.
yeah, I should be almost done by then. I touched upon the intellectual body, the wisdom or Vijnanamaya Kosha, just about few minutes back, as you understand. The fourth layer of our being is the Vijnanamaya Kosha, or I would say it is the intellect. Intellect is always working to guide us in the right direction. So, right or wrong, positive or negative, it has always a state of direction where we are supposed to heading to. It gives us the directions. But Manomaya Kosha always overrides it and takes its own way of doing things. So, how do we get into a state of balance? You don't need to balance intellectual body or Vijnanamaya Kosha. It is balanced by itself. It's just that our Manomaya Kosha has to be trained to make sure that you hear the voice of Vijnanamaya Kosha. That deals with also the wisdom also deals with our conditioning and deconditioning our deep beliefs and opinions. That's how it Vijnanamaya Kosha is very important for us. And many most important practice, I would rather say there is no practice is required for Vijnanamaya Kosha to be balanced. Just for the sake of saying, I have to say that meditation is the one tool which can help us to kind of give some exposure to ourselves or give some way, open the door for the intellectual being to come into us and guide us in the right direction. That's all is about Vijnanamaya Kosha. We cannot balance it. It's already balanced. We have to open the doors for it to come inside so that it guides us in the right direction. And the last layer is Anandamaya Kosha. Knowingly or unknowingly, let me say, this is my statement with most of my clients and patients, that you're always looking for happiness. And Anandamaya Kosha is a state where you are completely contented, you are blissful. There are no ups and downs, there are no positives and negatives. It is a state of complete balance. It is very difficult to explain a state of Anandamaya. It can only be experienced. We cannot really explain it. It is nothing but a combination, or I would say a practice which will uh, our individual consciousness merges with the universal consciousness to become universal consciousness. The consciousness is always universal. We have put some barricades or barriers and we identify ourselves as we are different. We are not part of universal consciousness. We are. Some part of it is always part of universal consciousness. It's many people will talk it as God or creator, or different religions have different names for it, but that doesn't matter. It's ultimately one. We all believe that. So Anandamaya Kosha is a state to be a, just like Vijnanamaya Kosha, open the doors for it to come in. What are the practices which is necessary for Anandamaya Kosha? I would say all those practices which we implement for Annamaya Kosha, Pranamaya Kosha, and Manomaya Kosha, they are all the steps to reach to a state of Anandamaya Kosha. So we don't have a specific tool to reach, specific therapy or a tool to be in a state of Anandamaya Kosha. I would rather say one thing: prayer and meditation are the only two things which can help us to be in a state of Anandamaya. Just sit for 2 minutes any day, any time of the day, close your eyes, sit in a very comfortable posture, focus on your breath, and don't think of anything else. Switch off all your gadgets Ask your family members around you not to disturb you and just practice this for 5 minutes. I'm assuring you, every day you experience a little bit of Anandamaya Kosha. And when this Anandamaya Kosha spills over to rest of the layers, you are always in a state of Anandamaya Kosha. That is reflected in your voice. It can be reflected in your speech. It can be reflected in your facial expressions. It is reflected in your actions. And you don't, people will automatically recognize you. And we'll not run behind our physical needs as we run in a mad rush, which we were doing, which we are doing. And one of the reasons for that is also this pandemic, I feel. When we are in a state of Anandamaya Kosha, our all other layers are so much at optimal levels that our immunity can fight anything. And when we can fight that, I believe COVID is nothing. I would rather say all of us have to. I may be going a little too extreme, but everybody of us has to meditate compulsorily, mandatorily, every day, at least 10 minutes. When many people tell me, my clients, Doctor, I don't have time to meditate. I usually tell meditate at least once a day, 15 minutes or 10 minutes. No, doctor, I don't have so much of time. I have to do that. I have to do this. Where do I find my time? I tell them you have to do twice. Because you don't have time, you have to do twice. You are much more, it is more needed for you to be more peaceful within yourself, to dedicate that much of energy for all your other activities. Believe me, when you spend that much of time for yourself, you will find time for everything else in your life. You will enjoy every moment of your life. And that is Anandamaya Kosha. When all these things are in state of balance and homeostasis, I don't have words to explain what state we could be in. Imagine a community being like that. Imagine let us start with a family, then a community, then a county, then a state, then a countries, and the whole world. So I may be speaking utopia, but it's possible. I still believe it's possible. It all starts with one person. But if we keep doing, and the number of people who are reaching that state are very high, then the whole world is peaceful. Today, the whole world is at war, I would say, all the time for various reasons. I don't need to speak about that. So, to conclude, I would thank you for giving me this opportunity to share this much of information. I would thank Amitaji for her wonderful invite and making this happen. So let us change our healthcare approach not towards illness but towards wellness. And also let us understand we have innate vitality and immunity to balance ourselves. Believe in yourself, believe in your own system, you will balance yourself. So I thank the divine in you from the divine in me. Thank you, Amitaji. Thank you all.
Thank you so much. It was beautiful how we reach Anandamaya Kosha. I think a lot of us are struggling right now, as you said. But we are open for questions, please. And you know, we've written our email here if you want to reach out or any other questions you have after the session. But we are open for question and answers right now. So one of the things that I wanted to actually talk about is that you did talk about the Pranamaya Kosha, and what kind of pranayams that you recommend for the Pranamaya Kosha?
The most simplest, I would say, you don't need to do any pranayama. Just become aware of your breath. That itself is a pranayama to start with. We just sit in a very comfortable posture wherever you are in. Make sure that sufficient air is there around you, and close your eyes and become aware of your breath. That itself to start with. Then we'll have many other techniques to come in, maybe Kapalabhati to as a purification technique in the breath. Then alternate nostril breathing, we call it as Nadi Shuddhi pranayams. Then we call Surya Nadi, Chandra Nadi. The list goes on. Several pranayamas are there. Just to give a brief, as I mentioned, simple focus on breath will take you a long way.
Okay. And then you also talked about the Shat Kriyas. So the cleansing, the detox process. So does it have to be done with under a guidance of a of an expert, or you can't do it? We cannot do it ourselves, right?
No, definitely not. I should have put that disclaimer earlier. We also
Okay.
have to learn that all the time from an expert because different Shat Kriyas has to be advocated to different kind of people. Everybody can't do everything. It depends on their age and their abilities and what other health conditions or diseases they are suffering from. Based on that, we'll have to advocate them. Kindly learn all those things from an expert and then you start practicing it. And some of the practices has always to be done only under guidance. You're not supposed to be doing without guidance. Some can be done, some can be learnt and done by yourself without any guidance. Like Shanka Prakshalana Kriya has to be always done with somebody monitoring you, a expert monitoring you.
So typically, let's say a client walks into your office with something, and then you would prescribe them. I'm using the word prescribe, like a doctor prescribes, but you would prescribe them, for example, a Shat Kriya, some kind of a diet, some kind of breathing exercises like a breath, and then acupuncture. So all this becomes part of your prescription.
Exactly.
Is what I'm understanding, right?
True. I basically, when some client walks in, I try to analyze their imbalances in all these layers. The most primary layers, as I mentioned about what are the imbalances in Annamaya Kosha, how it has originated from Manomaya Kosha, give a brief to them about it, and how you can balance each one of them with probably food and nutrition in Annamaya Kosha, pranayamas, Pranamaya Kosha balancing, and meditation for our Manomaya Kosha. Those goes as prescriptions for me. No medicines goes. There are no medication which I prescribe. I prescribe only these tools or methods or uh, uh, practices of yogic means, or it could be acupuncture, it could be acupressure, aromatherapy, whatsoever it could be, to bring in a state of balance.
So no medication at all, like not even Ayurvedic medication or anything else. You don't prescribe it. This is without your entire practice is without medication. That's what
Yes,
I'm understanding.
exactly. We as naturopaths in India, we always think food as medicine.
Mhm.
If I have to prescribe something, I would prescribe on the food. Maybe some herbs, definitely.
Mhm.
The herbs are
Sure.
also part of nature.
Yeah.
Many of the herbs we use in India as part of our food itself, like turmeric, ginger,
Oh,
pepper,
that's. Mhm.
the list goes on. So that itself is, it can be food. It's a very thin line between a medication and a food. I would incline myself more towards food rather than medication. And when we do regularly on a right kind of food, that maintains our health. We don't need to depend on therapeutic dosage of same foods to bring in a state of balance.
That's beautiful. I think we. I mean, this is a very strong message that you're sending to all the viewers that you can maintain your state of balance without any medication.
Yes, we can, because if we practice the practices what I just mentioned about on all the layers of our being, Manomaya, Pranamaya, and Annamaya, if we are moderation in all terms, probably our emotions also need to be in moderation, our
Mhm.
food habits to be need to be in moderation, then automatically you don't fall ill. You may fall ill, but probably you have other means to uh, one thing I would like to say here is the only control we don't have right now, probably we have but we don't have, is on our environment. We have polluted to a large extent. So that plays a very important role. Our soil, for that matter. Just imagine our water, soil, air, they're all polluted. So obviously we will fall ill. So we need therapies. But at the same time, on a long-term basis, as a race, human race, if you work on these aspects, air, water, earth, that can take us a long way. You're always grounded in that case, when those things are taken care. And when we are grounded, we are in a state of health. As you mentioned in the earlier question, foods are necessary to maintain balance. But because of so many other factors, we are not in a state of balance. It can be emotions, it can be environmental toxins, all those improper practices of food and lifestyle can lead to all these things. But at the same time, we need those food ingredients itself in therapeutic doses to bring into a state of balance. And then you can have moderate amounts of the same thing to maintain the same state of balance. At times you need therapeutic dosage, but not every time.
Sure, sure. Okay. Any other comments or questions from anyone who's listening before we wrap up? Okay. All right. So with that, thank you so much, Dr. Gurudatta, for making us understand the 5 different layers. Panchakosha concept is very powerful. I want to thank you for being here. Thank you to all the viewers. Please share our sessions. We have a lot of sessions going on every week. And thank you so much, Dr. Gurudatta. Final comments before I? Thank you so much, and have a great day. Bye-bye now.
Bye-bye.